Welcome, everybody, to the Fail Fast podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest that came from nothing. At the age of 14, she was left by her mother, who thought that being a mom was too hard. Well, some people break, others bend, and our guest is the one who bends. Instead of falling off the rails, she worked hard to do the best she could with what she had been dealt. Today, she's a multi-award winning businesswoman who has built a hugely successful chain of retail stores. This is a far cry from being homeless at 14. Ladies and gentlemen, with us today is Salena Knight.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
so much for inviting me on the show.
No problem, Salena. How are you today?
I'm great. We've already had such a great chat, so I feel like I've been warmed up, and I'm really ready to share some tips with your audience on how they can get their products into stores, because this is one of the ways that you can grow your business. And I am all for, easy implementable things that help you grow.
Awesome. And that's something I'm super stoked for this because it's something that interests me. And my part of business is the e-commerce world and not the shelves. So let's dig into that. And before we dig into that, let me ask you. So your mom left you at the age of 14. How does a kid heal from that?
Takes a very long time, and I can't honestly say it's healed. So my mum, looking back, you don't know this when you're a kid. My mum and my dad. So my dad was actually my stepdad. They got married when I was 3, and I'm still very close to my dad, my stepdad, and I just consider him my dad because he's always been there. But they split up, and then now I look back, my mother was suffering depression. She was an alcoholic, and I don't know, she had a whole bunch of stuff going on in her life that still to this day, I only know bits and pieces of. But she had 4 kids to 3 different dads. So, that in itself shows that there was obviously some problems there. And potentially the people that she had children with weren't necessarily the best influence on her life. For example, my stepdad is gay, and they literally got married because they did love each other. And this was back in the 80s. And he really, really wanted a family. And back then that was the only way. And he still says to this day, I loved your mum. Like that's not up for question. Yeah. But the people she was attracted to, I guess, were not necessarily the best people for her. And when I was 14, so I had an older brother, and I have an older brother and 2 younger siblings. And she was a single mum then. At that point, they'd split up. My dad was living in his car so that he could, help with the finances. And I guess she just broke. I don't know. I've tried to have the conversation with her, and she's very much a victim. So it's always everybody else's fault, which I really struggle with, because I believe you can make your own life. Like you are the only person who gets to say what happens in your life. So I really struggle, with that concept of it was everybody else's fault that this happened. And so when I was 14, she said, I can't have you anymore. And so I didn't actually have anywhere to go at that point. We were living in a different state. My dad was living in his car. My grandmother was not in a position to be looking after me, who lived nearby. My aunts and uncles were all not, they weren't fit, I guess you would say. So there was this kind of state of limbo where I stayed with a friend for a couple of weeks until my dad could arrange for his elderly parents in a different state to take me in. But I mean, that in itself, even though the friend I stayed with was my best friend for several years, that concept that your parents don't want you is very difficult to comprehend. And you don't actually realize at the time, you just kind of get through it, right? But it's all those years later. And I'm not sure if you're going to edit in what we were just talking about, but that probably has something to do with my constant need for, one of the things I really use my happiness for is when my students and my clients get success. So for me, I guess I take a lot of that in and internalize it and use that for my own happiness, because I want to see people succeed. But anyway, fast forward, I lived with my elderly grandparents. My grandmother was very sick. So I put myself through school essentially, and I finished school when I was 15 through just a whole bunch of really weird circumstances. Because I lived in a different state, when you change states, you essentially should change years as well. And that didn't happen. Plus, I'd started school early because my parents were hippies and, maybe smoked a little bit too much ganja. So it was like, get the kid off to school. So through this weird set of circumstances, I actually finished high school, like the whole of high school through year 12, we call it here, when I was 15. And so then I was in this position, sort of just before I finished high school, my grandmother decided that they were not in a position to look after me. So they were quite elderly. As I said, she was quite sick. She was on a ventilator and things like that. So this is really weird, but my 15-year-old boyfriend at the time, his mum took me in till I finished school. So I did a lot of moving around, and this makes me sound like I was a really bad kid. I was like the total opposite. I was the little nerdy kid who read my book, who went to school, who even had a part-time job, and I was paying my own school fees. I was paying for my own food, all that kind of stuff. I was paying rent to my grandparents and to my boyfriend's mum at the time. But you just do it. You've got two options. You just do it and you make your life better. And I guess the other option is you fall off the rails and you end up on that other side of society where you end up taking drugs or an alcoholic or things like that. But I think because I'd seen my parents do that, there was no way that was ever going to happen to me. So anyway, fast forward, I had to rent an apartment at 16, and that was really difficult to convince a landlord to give a 16-year-old an apartment. But I had a job, like I had a fully fledged job. Back in the day, I was only $330 a week, and all my friends were out clubbing because they were still living at home. I couldn't even get into the clubs because I was only 16. But I had electricity to pay, I had food to buy, I had rent to pay, I had to buy my own clothes, all that kind of stuff. So how do you heal from that? I speak to my mother a couple of times a year. That's probably how I heal. I will be fully honest and say I struggle with talking to her because every time I talk to her, it's about her. Every conversation that we have, even if it's a fantastic conversation about something that's happened with me, then she makes it, I don't know, somehow she turns the conversation around to be about how bad her life is. And I don't know, I've worked really hard to get those people out of my life. I just like being around nice, normal people without too much drama. So that's the story in a nutshell.
Well, that's an amazing story. And I really love something that you said, that we build our own lives and our own future. And you're living proof of that, right? You didn't have it easy, and you are where you are now because you built it yourself.
I mean, it's easy to blame other people, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for every decision that you make. And the only thing you can't really blame is the weather. That's, I don't know. And even then, I still think you have options. But I guess the other thing to say is, with my 3 siblings, 2 of them went one way and 2 of us went the other way. So it's, I don't know. I don't know if it's a boy-girl thing, but the boys went in one direction and the girls have ended up being quite successful.
Well, could have been too, just the odds. There was 50-50.
50-50.
Yeah. So, and you also moved 10 times during that period. Was that because of jobs or business?
No, looking back, I probably think it was more to do, we live in rented accommodation, and I'm guessing, I don't know for a fact, but I'm guessing my parents didn't pay the rent and we probably got kicked out.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think I went to, I tried to work it out. I think I went to 8 schools, but some of them I went to more than once. So I don't know if that counts. But what that did was just, I guess, builds that resilience of relying on yourself, which is not necessarily a good thing. I'm not saying this is a good thing, because I do find it really difficult to ask for help now. And I guess that's just completely born of having to put the faith in myself to get the next place. So many years later, like I'm in my 40s now, it's probably only been the last sort of 3 to 5 years that I've done that personal development that everyone talks about. And I've had to accept that these things, whilst they've made me quite resilient, have not necessarily I'm not going to say turn me into the best person, but I realize I have flaws because of it. And, we talked about the success. We talked about the asking for help. I'll try and carry some ridiculously heavy thing rather than just saying, excuse me, can you give me a hand? I don't know. That's just silly, guys. Just ask for help. Just ask for help. People want to help. Like if someone asks you to help, 9 times out of 10, you're more than happy. Like we get satisfaction out of giving. We're wired to get that. So think about it. This is how I try and phrase it in my head. Think about how happy someone else will be if they help you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the retail. So you became
into the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You became a retail strategist. So can you explain before we get into this, what is a retail strategist?
Okay. I don't know if it's a technical term. I just kind of made it up because I'm really good at strategy. I'm really good at looking at businesses and seeing where they should be. Sometimes record agency people say that they get like the tingles on the back of their neck when they listen to singers and things like that because they know they're going to be big. I kind of get that with businesses. Like I get this kind of little pitter patter and goosebumps and all that kind of stuff because I can just tell that they're going to be big. And I'm really good at seeing the steps that they need to take in order to get there. And I'm very much a how-to kind of person. I'm not fluffy. I'm not BS. I'm just like, guys, I don't want you to hustle. I don't know about you, Quin, but I hate the word hustle. I've been burnt out. I've been on the floor, unable to get up. I've been in my bed for 2 weeks. I got mumps, which is literally eradicated in Australia. Somehow I managed to, contract a disease because I was so run down. And in fact, it was only just at the beginning of this year, I had to take 4 months out of my business because I was diagnosed with stage 2 chronic kidney disease. And looking back, they could actually see, and I don't know why it wasn't picked up earlier, but even up till 10 years ago, I was having issues with my kidneys back then. And your kidneys are quite often related to stress. So, the doctor basically said to me, you've lived your whole life under stress. Like this is not a surprise. And I'm really happy to say I worked with a naturopath, and as much as nobody was expecting it, my kidney disease is now cured. So I am now back in the normal everyday person's range, which no one was expecting. So the whole concept of hustle, it's like, really, no, you don't. People are hustling because they just don't have a plan. And if you have a plan, if you set a goal, if you focus on what you need to do, focus on taking the specific action that you need to take, you will get results. But when you don't get results is you're spending 3 hours on social media instead of just using an Instagram scheduler, spending an hour, banging out 5 posts. Like I'm guilty too. Like I'm not going to say I'm the poster child, but it's easy to say we hustle because any task will fill up as much time as you give it. So the other day I had 3 hours in my whole day and I had this massive to-do list, including writing 2 articles. And usually they take me a good hour because I go and do some research and I pull some stats and things like that. So I had to write 2 articles. I had a client call, which goes for an hour, like that's a given. And then I had about 10 other things. And somehow I managed to get all of that done in 3 hours because it was just focused. It was like, if I do not get this done today, I'm going to have to work tonight. Yeah. I don't want to work tonight. I want to go to yoga. So I just sat down, got my cup of tea, put the music on, got it done. And I think the hustle comes from this need that everybody has to be seen to be doing more than, to be seen to be doing 150%. 100% will get you where you want to do. 100% is done. The extra is just stuff. So one of the big things, I'm very anti-hustle. I'm just, let's make a plan. Let's execute the plan. Let's get results. Rinse and repeat.
Yeah. So much of what you said makes all sense to me. Yeah. I relate to the hustle one, and I know that people don't have time for anything until something happens, like your health. Yes. And now you didn't have time to take an hour for something, but now when you find out
I was too busy.
Suddenly you can have 4 months to take care of your kidneys because now you have to, right? It's and then the hustle, I think that is it was a fancy thing. And I know Gary Vee promotes a lot of the hustle, and it made it sound like it's a cool entrepreneurial mentality. It's cool to hustle. But what people don't realize is what you said, and Gary Vee means the same thing. You got to hustle towards a goal. If you have a goal and you know where you're going, you're not just burning time. And I'm guilty of it too. A lot of times, so busy all day. At the end of the day, you realize you didn't do
You got
anything.
nothing done.
Yeah. And
That's why I really do believe we're still not talking about the products, guys, but let's just put this in perspective. If you want to get your products into stores, okay, I've got a client who's doing this right now. And she had this exact same conversation with me. Sal, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I know I need a sales agent. I know I need to get my packaging finished. I know I need to post on social media. I know I need to send out EDMs. I know I have to upgrade my website because the website's not fantastic. And I know I need to approach stockists, because at the end of the day, if I don't approach the stockists, I don't have the money to do any of the other stuff. And I don't know what to do. She only has 5 hours a day because she works while her kids are at school, but she works 5 days a week. She's still making some of the products. So she's so busy that we've moved to contract manufacturing, but some of those products we probably will delete out of her product line. But in the meantime, it's not worth her getting those contract manufactured because of the quantities that she needs. So she's still using 1 day a week to create the product, to do the blending. And then, I don't know, maybe I was just having one of my hard ass days, but it was like, you have 5 hours a day, and 3 of those things you said, you just told me that you have to send out your newsletters and you have to do your social media posting. That should take you 2 hours. You should be able to bang out 5 social media posts and 1 newsletter in 2 hours if you focus. In fact, I don't even think it should take 2 hours, but she's not very technologically advanced, so I'm going to give her 2 hours. That's only half of one of those days. But I think what we do is we get so overwhelmed. And I had this just yesterday. I had a really big webinar. 1,000 people registered, and I had a podcast booked for 7:30 in the morning, and then the webinar was at 10, and I do it live. And I was so stressed about how I was going to fit everything in. I didn't have to do anything. I literally had to turn up. I know this webinar inside out. I just had to do the podcast, and I can do that with my eyes shut. But I was nearly sick with nerves the night before, which is, now I look back at it, it was day before yesterday, and I just think, why did you get yourself so, anxious about this whole thing? Because you literally had to do nothing other than turn up and record the podcast. And the podcast is all set up. You just had to sit down, ask the questions, go and have some breakfast. You had an hour and a half in between, come back, done. So I think we get very much wrapped up in the stuff we have to do, the overwhelm that comes with the to-do list, rather than just going, let's just bang it out. Let's just get it done. What can I feasibly do in my 2 hours? I've only got 2 hours. What's on my to-do list? But what we do is we tackle the biggest thing, when actually what we should do is go, I've got 5 things that'll take 20 minutes. How about I just knock all those off?
Yeah. Sometimes the number one thing on your to-do list, pardon me, is just the first thing you thought of. It doesn't mean it's the most important one.
Yes.
And
yes.
Also, I tend to outsource a bit if it's little tasks that I can just outsource to somebody.
I am the queen of outsource. You do not, guys, you do not need to be loading products up onto your website. There is someone on Fiverr who has a machine program that will do that for you. We'll do 100 of them for $5 or $10. You do not need to be doing this stuff yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just one extra. I talked to a VA once, and I asked her, I had 400 listings that I had to work on and upload. And I created the job, and I awarded the job to this VA. And she told me, if you get me this software, it was $9.99 US.
$999 or $9?
No, $9. $9. It was a monthly membership. She said, if you buy this was, I had programmed for a 40-hour a week, 1 month job. Mm-hmm. And she said, if you buy me this software, I can have it done today.
Oh,
So,
love it. And this is the thing, resizing image. Look, I really want to get onto the good stuff, but
yeah.
resizing images, let's put this in perspective. One of the things I'm going to tell you is that in order to get your products into stores, you need to have a gallery of images. And your retailers are going to want everything from 400 by 400, 1200 by 1200, full to all the way through to print ready, high res images if they want to use that for point of sale. So having those, you get the big photo. There are literally, again, people on Fiverr, Upwork, wherever you want to go, who have a program that will go take this picture, make it 1200 by 1200, 600 by 600, 400 by 400, and they'll even put it in really pretty folders for you. And all they're doing is going copy and paste. You, on the other hand, are paying for Photoshop or doing it in Canva or something, loading it up, looking at the size, trying to crop it, all this. Just give somebody else that job, because they're probably going to be doing a much better job. And in the meantime, you could be calling a stockist to see if you could get your product on the shelf.
And you can, exactly, do something else. So to get on the shelves, starting from the beginning,
Okay.
how would we go about finding the retailers?
Okay. In all my years of business, I have over a decade in retail. And in that time, not only did I have online and offline, but I also created our own product ranges. So I feel like I've got some insight here as to what the retailer's looking for, but also what you need to do as a wholesaler in order to get your product on the shelf. So here's the things that you need to think of. And Quin, I'll put all this into a download for you. So if people are listening, they don't have to take any notes. I'll put it all in a download for you. First of all, your product has to suit their ideal customer. So you need to look, this is the biggest thing that I see. The biggest mistake is you go and outsource someone to give you a list of people that you can approach, but you don't even look at their website. And you really are going to piss them off if you ring up. So I had an eco-friendly baby store, and we would get people ringing up with disposable products. I'd be like, you didn't even look at what we sell. And that you've turned me off straight away. So think about who they're selling to, and does your product actually suit their customer? Because they're going to ask you that question. And maybe you've got something a little bit quirky, a little bit different, but you need to know, or you need to tell them why this product would work for their customer. So when you're thinking about that, it also has to work well with their current product mix. So don't try and sell me a card game if I sell baby products. It's just not going to work. But you could sell me a card game if I maybe had a homeware store, because people could see how that could work. So what you're offering has to work well with their current product mix. Suitably, if they're a luxury store and your product is $9.99, they're probably not going to want it, because it's not going to fit with what the image that they're trying to portray and what their customer is looking for. But by saying all of that, they also are always looking for something that's different. So what is the thing? What is the hook about your product that you can use for the retailer to say, wow, we don't have that, or I could see how I could sell that with that. I could see, my best customer is Jane. Would Jane like this? And this is what I say as a retailer to my retailers is, think about that customer that comes in every week and spends, or comes back to your website and spends hundreds of dollars. Would they buy this thing? And if the answer is yes, fantastic, you got a winner. Of course, it's got to have a good margin. We're not going to take something on as a retailer if we can't make any money. And by the same token, it has to be easily saleable. So if you have a product that has 400 gadget bits that need to be pressed to do something, and my sales associate has to spend half an hour with someone explaining why they need this thing, I'm probably not going to take it on board unless I'm going to make a really good lot of money and you have something there that I can use to persuade the customer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm thinking about electrical things at the moment, but I know that there are like a lot of people with organic products. They tell you all these things and you're like, but you've got a sales associate with 15,000 SKUs. They're not going to remember that. You've got to put it on the packaging. If you want them to know this stuff, you've got to put it on the packaging. And you need to be able to fulfill their orders when they need them. So one of my clients, the one I was just telling you about before, she really, really wanted to be stocked by this really strict cruelty-free store. Like that was her goal. She tried a couple of times and they'd knocked her back. And when we started working together, I said to her, so I know this company and I know other people who have gotten orders from this company. When they order 1,000 units every couple of weeks, can you actually fulfill that? Because if you can't, you cannot submit your product to them. And she was like, well, I can't do a couple of thousand at this point in time. Like she was still making herself. And I said, well, you can't go to them until you have all of this stuff ready for them. And in fact, one of the reasons that she had been rejected in the past, coming back to the photos, was they weren't happy with her photos. So she had, she'd taken the photos herself. So she had to go off and get those photos done professionally. And then it was a much easier sell. By the same token, her packaging was not very good. It looked very homemade. And this was a very, very much a catering to a market of people who are prepared to pay $200 for some eye cream stuff. So you have to be able to fulfill the order, and you also have to be able to turn it around. So I don't want to be ordering from you and then you're going to take 6 weeks because you're bringing it in from China because you're running a just-in-time model. That happens once and I'm never going to order from you again. And then the last thing that you really need to think about if it's a physical store is it going to sit well on their shelves? And by that, I mean, is it going to look nice? Like if you can, go into one of the stores and see where would you see your product fitting here? Is it going to be a POS display at the counter? Is it going to be on the shelf? Is it going to hang? All those kinds of things. So you need to know all of this, because if you know the answers to all these questions, and remember, I'm going to have all this in a download for you, you are going to get a yes way easier than if you don't put all that information in up front.
And then talking about packaging to be on the shelf, is there certain things that are mandatory to have on the packaging?
Depending on which criteria you're in, like you generally have to have all the ingredients. Obviously it depends which country, but you have to have the ingredients. You have to have use by dates if that's the case. You may have to have like your contact information, but most retailers would like a barcode. But if you're selling a product already, there's a good chance you're going to have a barcode, and a lot of point of sale systems. So if we're talking physical stores, a lot of point of sale systems will already have their own, they have the ability to generate a barcode. So barcode's great. I wouldn't use, if you don't have a barcode on your product, I wouldn't let that stop you trying to get your product into a store. Because if they say yes, you can spend $100 and go and buy one. So don't, again, by the same, using that same philosophy earlier, it's really easy to procrastinate. It's really easy to find every excuse under the sun. And that this client that I'm telling you about, hers was packaging. So when we redid her branding, then she wanted boxes for everything. So she wouldn't approach any stockists because she didn't feel that if you didn't have the boxes, they wouldn't buy it. So it's really easy to stay in the comfortable zone of my product's not ready, but you aren't going to make any money if people can't see it and they can't buy it. So put yourself out there, move into uncomfortable, because what's the worst that could happen? They say no.
Exactly.
And then you ask, and then you ask them why.
What happens there when they do say no?
So I would ask them why. I would just say, fantastic. So 2 things. First one is, could I ask you for your feedback as to why? Is it, you could even put some things forward. You could say, is it because you don't feel that your customers would align with it? But you want to know the answer. I feel that if someone says no, you most definitely, and don't say why, like really snarky, just say, I would love some feedback on why you think this wouldn't fit, just so that we can tweak it in the future when we're approaching other stores. Nice. That's nice. That's, I'm not feeling bad because I'm saying no. I maybe really didn't like your photos. And it wasn't until this client I was telling you about actually asked that company, what is it you don't like? And they said, we don't like your photos. But she thought she had great photos. I didn't think she had great photos, but she thought she had great photos. And she said it was really difficult. We also did a little interview where she was at an organic market, and this couple tried her product, a skincare product, on, and the husband really loved it. And it's not cheap, because it's all organic and cruelty free and small batch, all that kind of stuff. And he said to her, I really love your product, but there is no way in hell I'm sticking that on my bathroom shelf. The bottle is too ugly. And she said that gutted me. Like I nearly gave the whole thing up because of it. But she said, after you get over the initial shock, it's like, now that I looked at it, now she looks at it from her new branding and she goes, oh my God, what was I thinking? But take that feedback on board. Like, don't get into this blame mentality of, oh, they just didn't want any product. Maybe they do have something really constructive to tell you, and take that on board and go, right, if they don't like my packaging, if they don't think it's a product, if they don't think it's going to fit for their clients, how did I get that wrong? What can I take away from that and go, okay, if they feel it didn't fit, are these other people on my list? Should I reassess those now?
Yeah, that's a very good point. You should get point of view of maybe somebody of your potential client. I have a case of one of the products I created was a swaddle blanket, a baby blanket.
Yep.
And
I bought a lot of those in my time.
I had the best packaging ever. And I always thought it was like, mine is the best ever. And I had one swaddle blanket in each package. And when it went to market in the US and Canada, started in the US only. And it wasn't selling. It wasn't selling at all.
Because nobody buys one.
Exactly.
Is that going to be the answer?
It is. It is. I talked to my wife after I consider the product a failure. And I told her, well, you know what? We have twins now, so we could use a ton of those anyway. And I told her, and she said, honey, I wouldn't buy it either.
No.
I need it.
Three.
Yeah, I need at least 3 or 4 per day. What am I going to do with that? And I'm like, oh, she was the expert. She was the client.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And even if I remember back when I first started, there was this lovely gentleman who has gone on to be a raving success. And he literally turned up on the doorstep of the shop with these beautiful wooden toys. And he was asking my feedback. He's like, you are the store I want to sell my toys to. This is my product range. This is what I want to sell them for. This is what it's going to cost me. Would you buy them? And for years on, he ended up becoming a huge manufacturer, all ethically made wooden toys, just a lovely business all in all. They ended up distributing lots of things, but he was prepared to go out there and say, what do you think they should sell for? And in fact, I actually thought they should sell for more than what he was prepared to sell for. In fact, we actually did sell many of his products above recommended retail.
Nice. So how does that work? If I have my product and I want to put it on the shelf, you as a retailer, do you tell me I need it to be within this range? How does that work?
No, I think it's up to you to tell me why I should have the product. So a couple of things to think about before you even approach. So I think 2 schools of thought, we kind of work in 2 different ways. One is we just go gung-ho and approach everybody. And the other one is we use this idea of not doing anything because we're worried about where we might end up, and if somebody doesn't like it, the worst thing in the world can happen. But I think there are a few things that you really need to look at before you even start. So first, as I said, I'm going to write all this down for you. But the first thing is to make sure you've got insurance. Yes. So if you are the product manufacturer or even the product importer, you are the liable distributor, vendor, manufacturer. So you've got to make sure you've got your your product's liability insurance. You're going to have to be registered for tax because people want their tax input credits. Those retailers want to be able to get all the credits they can. And really think about, as much as it's going to pain you, your account terms, you let people pay pro forma for the first couple of orders, but there aren't many retailers who aren't going to want trade terms. And then also look at, how is that retailer going to order from you? Do you expect them to email it to you? Most retailers are going to want to send a purchase order. So when they send that purchase order to you, how are you going to deal with the fact that products might be out of stock? Really think about these things, which I know you can kind of deal with them as they come, but at least give them some thought. So if it all goes pear-shaped, you've got some concept of how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then for me, we talked about the product shots. So, insurance and product shots are probably my top 2. But the last one is just to have some kind of marketing plan. And it does not have to be some fully fledged, great big thing on the wall. But as a retailer, if you are giving me the opportunity to promote your products, and maybe you might do some exclusive deals. So you might say, hey, we're happy to work. You just have to say, we are happy to work with you to create exclusive deals. Like even that in itself is going to give you something different. But if you're going to have sales throughout the year, making sure that you know that your suppliers, those retailers are going to get first access so that they can do it, because there becomes very much an us and them. If you are selling this product yourself and you're selling it in retail stores and you're offering free shipping, for example, but you're not offering free shipping to the retailer, so they can't pass that on. You don't want that animosity there. Like, remember, at the end of the day, the retailer is like an agent for you. They are putting your product in front of tens, hundreds of thousands of your ideal client. How much money would it cost you to do that yourself? So they're your best friend. You can't upset them. They're doing all the work for you. You literally just ship the product out. So by encompassing each retailer, or even having a marketing plan in place, and just saying, even if you, like I'm saying, it doesn't have to be fancy. It could just say a couple of times a year, in the lead up to spring and summer, we tend to go on sale. We'll give you access to those discounts 2 weeks in advance so that you can put it in, because the retailer is going to have a marketing plan as well. And you need to know what that looks like for them. They might need 6 weeks because they're so far ahead. They might do print advertising. So really, if you want to be the ultimate supplier, the ultimate distributor, the ultimate manufacturer, is, even keeping like a little bit of a CRM of what different stores need. And then also knowing which one of those stores you should be loving the bejesus out of. If they're ordering thousands of stuff, thousands of products, thousands of SKUs, thousands of units every single week or month, what are you doing to make them feel like they are the best people in the world? Even if you just said to them, you are our number one retailer, that in itself, it doesn't have to be a monetary thing, but really doing that, recognizing that these people are paying your bills. If they stop buying your product, it's really hard slog to be doing it all yourself again. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And now a question for you about the size of the retailer. Do you advise people that are starting out and they have never been on the shelf anywhere, should they approach the big chains? Should they go through after the franchise or the small mom and pop shop?
So most big box stores won't take your product without runs on the shelves. So they need to know that there's proof of concept. They're probably going to ask you how many units you're already selling, which maybe you're selling it on Amazon, and maybe you're selling 10,000 units a month. But they need to know that it's already a product that works. But here's the thing. Most big box stores will make you discount. So if they want a 50% margin, 100% markup, so your product, you're going to sell it to them for 10 and they're going to sell it for 20, Target is going to want it for 7 to sell for 16. So can you actually facilitate that, the decrease in your own margin? Because to sell it to Target for 7, you probably need to be buying it in at 2 or 3. By the time you've got to pay your insurance, you've got to do your freight, all that kind of stuff. You've got to make some money out of this thing as well. You've got an advertising budget. And I think a lot of times when people work out their cost of goods, they tend to forget things like shipping. They forget their tariffs if they have to pay it. They forget the shipping to the customer if they're giving the customer free shipping, and Target is not going to pay you for shipping. We're talking logistics now in terms of, we're not talking about shipping, that's logistics. They're wanting pallets and pallets of stuff. So how are you going to pay for that? Where do they want it sent to? Is it going to 5 distribution warehouses all around the country? Is it going to 1? So all of those things are going to affect that margin that you get. And a lot of people get so focused on getting their product into a big box store and then make no money. And here's the thing. If a big box store discounts your product, they don't suffer any loss. They take the discount off the buy price from you.
Yeah.
So if you sold it for 7 and they wanted to sell it for 16 and they sell it for 10, that $6 is coming off what they paid you. So you might end up with $1. Now, all of this obviously can be negotiated, but at the end of the day, the big box retailer is not necessarily your friend if you don't have something that you can get high output for, or alternatively, you're extremely bespoke. So for example, a bridal accessory maker, that couture type thing, maybe you might get into a really high end, like a Nordstrom, but you know you only have to fulfill 1,500 units because it's a really high end product that not a lot of people are going to buy. So understanding what that looks like, but also not putting all your eggs in one basket. So I know of someone who did get a Target deal, but if they lose Target, they kind of lose the business, if that makes sense, because they did that. They went, we want the big box store. We don't want the mom and pop stores. But then you've got no one. And Target can drop you like that. If your product is on the shelf for 4 weeks and they don't sell what they wanted, they might just ship it all back to you and say, sorry, we want our money back, kind of thing, or we're not paying the end of our invoice, whatever it looks like. So don't put your eggs all in one basket. And I appreciate that having that deal that might mean 30 or 100,000 units a month to Target might mean being in 500 mom and pop stores. But where are you if that product doesn't work? And I don't ever want you to be in that position, ever.
So the ideal will be then not have your eggs all in the same basket. Go to all the mom and pop shops where you can get a bigger margin and make some profit, proof of concept, and then just go to then search the big one if you're willing to at that point.
If you're willing to. And you have to be able to, this is not going to work if you're doing just-in-time production. So if you are literally, ordering the minimum order quantity and then you're doing that every 4 weeks, just so you don't have to sit on inventory, that's not going to work if you're selling into one of the big box stores. But you need to do the omni-channel retail. And I know we think about that as being online and offline, but have your own website, be on eBay or Craigslist, be on Amazon, be on your own website, always have your own website. And then look at these other channels as well. Use your influencers, do all of those things, but don't get distracted by having, I have to have 50 different streams of income. Focus on the ones that are going to be consistent, almost recurring revenue that will keep your business afloat if everything else goes pear-shaped. For now, that's what I would focus on. And I've seen businesses spend 2 years on a deal to get into a big box store at the expense of everywhere else, because some brands will want exclusivity.
Yeah.
So what do you do for those 2 years? You just sit there and hope that they're going to take your product? I don't know. I like to make money. I don't know about you. I'm not in this retail thing to not make money.
Yeah, no. Hope doesn't pay the rent.
Hope does not pay the mortgage. No.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the other things that people really need to think about when they're selling a product is how easily is it shippable? And in this day and age, and that toy manufacturer I was talking to you about, he had this really beautiful baby gym, kind of like an A-frame thing that you hangs the little mobiles off.
Yes.
But the problem with it here in Australia was we have satchels to send our postage out in, like USPS type satchels, and it didn't fit in the satchel it needed to. It was about an inch too long to fit in that satchel. So then I had to move to the next one. So as a retailer, we actually stopped buying. We didn't stop buying the product, but we stopped shipping. It wasn't available online because the cost to ship it was not recoupable. So instead of being sort of $15 to ship, it went into the $30 to ship, and the product only cost $60, and no one was going to pay $30 to ship it. So think about that when you're, how is your retailer going to ship out? Are they going to ship in boxes? And I know you may not know the answer to this, but generally speaking, if they're using like a USPS satchel or a FedEx satchel or however it looks like, will your product fit in that thing? Like, this sounds so basic, but so many people overlook it. And this may be the thing that brings your product undone. So the retailer gets it, they start getting a whole bunch of orders and they can't ship it. Maybe it's oversized, it's overweight, maybe, it could be loads of different things. So is the product shippable, easily shippable? And also, does it need packaging? Like, if I had a choice, nothing would have packaging. But as a retailer, if you're selling me some really strange shaped thing that is not going to stand up on a shelf, it's not going to work on hang sell because you haven't given me any hang sell packaging, what the freaking heck am I supposed to do with it? Like stick it in a basket? And this is where you see those, especially mom and pop stores where they've got stuff in a basket on the shelves, on the counter, because they haven't been given an easy way to sell it. And as a consumer, it really brings your brand down. So as much as I hate packaging, packaging will sell your product. And packaging will also sell your product more if it has the information that the customer needs all in one spot. So if you have a product that needs instructions, we're not talking necessarily, we're talking clothing, but even clothing on a tag, say it's reversible, have a picture of both sides, because the sales associate can't remember everything about every SKU. So what can you do to make your product as saleable as possible when it's hopefully sitting or hanging on a shelf?
That's such a great point that a lot of people forget. If you're going to be on a shelf, you have to fit on that shelf or be able to stand.
Fit on the shelf, yes. Yeah, and by all means, that's really good. We didn't talk about that, but you have to fit on the shelf. So if you have something that's really tall, and the average shelf might be 12 inches, go into a retail store that you're looking to be in and have a look at how they merchandise. Because if your thing is so big it's not going to fit on a shelf, maybe it needs to be a longer package rather than a taller package. Or maybe you just need to flip the design around so that the printing is slightly different. Mm-hmm. But the more difficult you make it for a retailer to put it on the shelf and to sell, the less likely they are to buy, and the more likely they are to direct their customers to your competition.
Yeah, you just make it too easy for them to say no.
You make it as easy as possible. And remember, when you're doing all of this stuff, have a bit of a mantra. People are dumb. People are dumb. If it's online, they're going to email you and ask you how much shipping is, despite the fact it says free shipping. Or they could just click on the tab that says shipping. If you're in store and it has 3 pieces, make sure you say contains 3 pieces, because even though you say it, people are dumb. I don't. That's my mantra. When you're designing, people are dumb. How can you make this as obvious as possible?
Yeah, there's also another point is that people, they just look at what they want. They see the titles. And I did a test on Amazon, and it was a short period test. And you know how Amazon has the title, and then there's 5 bullet points. On the 5th bullet point, I wrote as a test, and a few of us had Amazon sellers talked about this. And I wrote, if you can see this, contact me. The product is free. Nobody.
How many?
Nobody. No. And
do we read past 2? I don't think we read past 2.
No, I think it's the first 2. It's even the title. People don't read the whole title. The first keywords right at the beginning. Then they look at the pictures, and then the pictures are on Amazon what makes you sell the product.
Yes.
If they look at the pictures and then the reviews show that there's at least 4.5 stars, people will buy if your photos look good.
Yep. Any online retailer is going to be exactly the same. They will give your product preference if it looks good.
Yeah.
They'll put you on the homepage. If you give them some fantastic lifestyle images, you've just made their life easy. We'll put you on the homepage.
One more thing about being on the shelves, about warranty. Mm-hmm. Is there a certain minimum warranty that a retailer wants?
So notice, I mean, you're legally obliged to give a warranty. In most cases, it's 12 months. If this is a feature, if you can give a lifetime warranty. So we actually had a product that had a lifetime warranty, and we were the only people who offered it for this product. So this was a product we were manufacturing and then wholesaling to other people, because we worked out that our failure rate was so small that absorbing that cost, and to be honest, most people only use the product for 2 years. Mm-hmm. By then they'd grown out of it. So if the product failed, the return rate was so low that the couple of dollars it cost us to replace it got us so many more sales, because we were the only people on the market who had that guarantee.
Nice. Like
a lifetime guarantee. So it's, have a think about those sorts of things. And as a retailer, if someone else is not promoting that, but you have an extended warranty or you have a lifetime guarantee, it's going to make me think about selling your product over and above everybody else's, because I know that this is not my problem. If it breaks, you're going to fix it. I don't have to worry about that person coming back 2 years from now complaining that it broke. You already have told me that it's not my issue. You're going to fix it.
And when it comes to food products or things that go in or on the human body, does the retailer look for special certificates, special licenses, like FDA approvals and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I think you have to be mindful of the retailer that you're looking to get into. So if you can command a premium when you have certain things. If you are organic, you're going to command a premium. If you're certified vegan, you're going to command a premium. If you're certified cruelty-free, and all these things cost money, and they're quite strict. But we're not talking a lot of money. So some of them might be a few $100s. Maybe you want USA made or Australia made. To get that, you need a certain thing. You need to submit the application and you have to pay the fee. But those ticks, the healthy food tick, all those things are going to make your product more saleable and more enticable. Like, a customer is going to choose you as long as you promoted it on your packaging, or you tell me on the bottle, because customers want that security when they buy a product. And by the same token, the retailers want that as well. So there's a lot to think about when you're going into retail. And as I said, by no means you use these as excuses not to start trying. Yeah. Because if you've got the bare bones and you're willing to get a retailer, a retailer's willing to take you on, how much more excited are they going to be about your product when you come back with awesome product shots, when you come back with that marketing plan? Don't use this safe, secure zone of, nobody's got my product, to stop from moving to the next level. But so there's kind of 3 steps, right? We went through the first step, which was getting your wholesale house in order, like getting the stuff that you need ready to approach. And then the second step was just making sure that you know what the supplier is looking for. So again, it's kind of there's more work in the pre than into the actual approach. But when it comes to actually approaching the retailer, you have to do your research. How do they want your product submitted? Because anyone who's good is going to probably have a page on their website, because they get so many of these every single week, that says, fill out this form, tell us about your product. If we think it's going to be a fit, we'll get back to you. If you don't hear from us, you're more than welcome to follow up. Or if you don't hear from us, we don't think it's a good fit. So there's nothing worse as a retailer than having that on your website and then someone turning up in your store saying, can I sell you this stuff? It's like, immediately you've impinged on my time, but you also were not respectful that we have a process in our store. Because the person who's on the floor may have nothing to do with the buying, and you've just wasted their time. So as a retailer, I'm like, you just took that person should have been selling. So make sure you research how they want the product submitted. And I always recommend calling and just asking them, are they taking new product on at the moment? You don't have to tell them. Just say, I'm just ringing to see, before I waste your time, are you taking any new products on, any new ranges on at the time? Because maybe they just went to a trade show and the answer is no. And if they say no, mark them down to call back again in 6 weeks. So don't ever take no for an answer. When you also cold call, make sure you ask to speak to the buyer, because if you've called the store, again, you probably will get the sales associate. They can't help you. And always try and pin down a time. So if you ring them up and say, can I speak to the buyer? And they say, she's only here on Tuesdays. Just say, fantastic. Is it possible for me to call at 10 on Tuesday? You put the time out the front. And they're either going to say, I'll grab the diary and have a look, or they're going to say, I'm not sure, I can leave a message. But even if that message goes through, it says that you want to talk to her at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. So he or she knows straight up front whether they're either going to come back and say, I can't do 10, but I can do 12, or I can't do Wednesday, I can do Thursday. But you've shown them that you're not going to waste their time, because time is money in retail. If they still won't give you the buyer's details, you can't take no for an answer. Like, honestly, that's another mantra you have to have. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to take several calls for you to get the person that you need to speak to. Just keep doing it. Because be honest, if someone calls me 6 times in 6 weeks, I'll probably do one of 2 things. I'll either tell them that I've looked at the product and I'm not interested, or 2, I think, oh my God, if they are this determined, then I probably should look at the product. And then that whole when no means no is, it is so easy to take to heart when somebody says they don't want your product. But ask for that constructive criticism, that constructive feedback, take that on board. Maybe you do need to change a few things. But at the end of the day, unless they've specifically said, we do not think your product is right, and you won't change the things that they didn't like, I would be calling them again in 6 weeks. Because you never know, maybe in the meantime, 25 people have come into the store and asked for that thing that you were going to sell. And then you just happen to call up and they say, right, yes, we've had a lot of people asking for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Red Bull story. Do you know the Red Bull story?
No, I don't.
About so Red Bull, the energy drink, that was their guerrilla marketing tactic. They wanted to get into the grocery stores, but no one would take their product because, who needs an energy drink? So they actually started to get all these people calling up stores asking if they stocked Red Bull. And they just got hundreds of people to call hundreds of stores asking if they stocked Red Bull. And when all these queries started to come in, then the grocery stores were like, maybe we need this Red Bull thing.
That's such a great technique. No.
So I think those are kind of the biggest things is, get yourself in order, do your research, do the approach, and don't necessarily take no for a no.
So what if I do get your attention and you tell me show up Tuesday at noon? When I show up Tuesday at noon, what should I have with me? Should I take the product and instructions and everything or not?
I think you should take the products. You're probably going to have a range most of the time. So take the products that most fit, but also grab that download I'm going to give you and make sure you have all those other things written out. So you're going to have a line sheet. So a line sheet is literally just a picture of the product, the wholesale price, the recommended retail price or the minimum sale price. And then you could, if you've got any bonuses. So you literally have a sheet with all the images on it and the pricing, maybe a minimum order quantity or, comes in boxes of 6, whatever the customer needs to know. So they can have that on hand. I always take an order form, always try and secure an order. So even if they're going to send you a purchase order, always, try and take an order on the spot, even if it's just the fact that they then have to send you a purchase order. That's okay. Because you can email it back to them and say, this is what I'm going to do, and here's an offer. One of the best things I like if you've got a decent range, so coming back to my client with the natural skincare, I think she has 40 products in her range, but 10 of them are really good sellers. They're, over and over again, tried and true. So we actually put together 2 packs, 2 introductory sort of starter packs together, which was those 10 best-selling products. I think we did 6 products in one and 10 in the other. So we had 2 price points. Knowing what the minimum order is, what is the minimum order that you're going to accept? And don't make it 0. Sort of 300 is a nice one that most retailers would be okay with. It depends on your price point, obviously. If you've got a really low value product, maybe it's going to be $100. Maybe if you've got a $2 product. But $300 is a nice amount to make it worth your time and to know that they're committed. Because the other thing is, if someone only orders 5 of them, there's a thing there's this Murphy's Law that is, you need to have the product on the shelf for it to sell. And the minute you get to 1 or 2, people just don't buy it. I don't know what it is. Every independent retailer will tell you, as soon as there is 1 on the shelf, nobody wants to buy it. So if they only have 2 of 12, say you've got 12 things in the range and they buy 2 of everything, it's not going to look good on the shelf. I would much rather they take 4 units of 3 things. And this is where I think it's quite important to think about, maybe you want to go in there saying that they come in a box of 6, even if they don't come in a box of 6, or they come in a box of 3 or 4 or 5, so that when they order, that there's going to be a minimum of 3 on the shelf, or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10. Mm-hmm. It also makes packing really easy. So if your product does come in a box of 10, make it a box of 10, because then you just pick that box up and put it in their box. But more importantly for me, it's to make sure that your product is well represented on the shelves. Because if there's just 1 of everything, it's not going to sell.
So if I set a MOQ or a minimum order quantity of 100 units or 50 units, does the retailer expect or prefer if I have free shipping to them?
Everybody loves free shipping. Like, I won't deny that, but shipping is expensive. So you really need to think about how you're going to facilitate that and how much it impacts on your margin, because shipping down the road is going to be cheaper than shipping to the other side of the country. So what is the worst case scenario for your shipping, and can you absorb that? The other thing to think about is maybe you've got a really high margin product. So maybe there's one that you just got 900% on it. You know, it's just one of these things. It sells well. It doesn't cost a lot. It just works really, really well. So you could do an offer that was, you know, if you buy $500 plus 10 of these, then we offer you free shipping, because you know the margin's in there.
Yeah.
But you need to know what it costs to sell the product first. So free shipping is great, but what I prefer, so from the retailer side, free shipping is great, but from the product creator side, and what I would tell you as your business coach is, I would rather you offer them free product, because it might cost you $50 to ship it, but for that same $50, you might be able to give them 10 units of something, which for them is worth way more. So
Exactly.
say we sell it to them, we can give them 10 of them because they're $5, but they might sell them for $12.95. And now they've got $120 worth of value for free.
That's a great point. Yeah, very good point.
And it doesn't cut into your margin. Yeah, shipping is a direct margin cutter. Selling them product is only the amount that it costs you. So it's so significantly smaller than the actual cost of the shipping. And not only that, they have more products, so they can use it for a giveaway. So one of the things we do with my product creators is, when someone does one of those new orders, obviously we give them a bit of a discount because it's a starter pack. But then we also say, you know, if you order within the next 48 hours, we will give you 5 of these things worth of $120. You can choose to give them away to your best customers. You could run a giveaway. You could just sell them and take the money. But now we've got a marketing plan, right? Now it's like, oh, hold on. I can either take my money, or I could give them to some influencers, or I could give them to my best customers to do some reviews with. But now you're giving me a way of promoting your product for a couple of bucks.
When it comes to refunds or returns, use the same technique. Instead of deducting the price of the product, you just replace it with a new one.
Yeah, so that's what we would generally say. You have to make sure you have your terms and conditions in place. How are you going to deal with refunds and returns? But generally speaking, I would always say replace, and really think about what it's worth. So people get so caught up, we get so personally attached to the products that we create. But if it's going to cost more to ship it back to you to prove that it's broken, you know, are you going to be happy with the supplier sending you a photo? Because you're going to have to pay to ship it back to you, and then you're going to have to pay to ship a replacement back to the store.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Like here in Australia, that could be anything, you know, the minimum that's going to cost you is about $20. And if it's a $20 product, is it really worth it? Just send me a photo. I can see it's broken. I'll send a replacement out to the customer. Or maybe they've replaced the customer, and I will ship you that replacement with your next order.
Exactly.
That's even better, because then we're not getting the shipping. So just think about these things, because shipping is one of my biggest bugbears. You can control it with volume, but at the end of the day, you are at the mercy of somebody else, and that is pure profit. You can't change what that shipping cost is. You can get economies of scale. If you're sending a lot of parcels out, you can get a reduced rate. But at the end of the day, you have more control over the cost of your product, because if you order more units of that, we can get the product down. If we change the lid, maybe we can save an extra 2 cents. And never underestimate the power of a penny. You know, 1 penny saving on 10,000 units is what, $1,000. That's all gone back in your pocket. So really getting your head as a product creator or a manufacturer, that not to cut things to the bare bones, but to really appreciate what each input of the product is, from the packaging, the printing, the bottle, the dropper, you know, the lid, all these kinds of things. If you can just save a penny on each one of those, maybe you've got 5 cents on every single unit, and that 5 cents adds up, guys.
It does. I know the perfect story for that. The airline, Air Canada, it's one of the
Mhm.
biggest Canadian airlines. It's actually really big internationally as well. But the meals that they served in every flight that was over 4 hours, every meal contained 2 black olives in that little dish. By removing the black olives, they had a savings of about 10 million per year.
It's
So that,
scale.
it's scale. That's
It's scale. And you have to think about that, because don't think small. So you will never hear me say the word small business, because I don't believe that there's any small in business. If you want to think small, you will stay small. So have that concept in your head when you go into it, and even knowing, I don't know, maybe think you're on Shark Tank or something. This is what my current cost of goods are now. If I can get to 5,000 units, ask your supplier, what is it going to cost me at 5,000 units? What's it going to cost me at 10,000 units? What's it going to cost me at 20,000 units? Because then you can at least, maybe you're prepared to take a little bit less margin now, knowing that if you get 20 stores on board, you will make that up quite easily by going to the next level. So really understanding every single piece of money that goes into your product. So many people forget, we call it the landed cost, right? It's the cost to get it ready for shipping. We forget the tariffs that we have to pay, the taxes, the shipping from the warehouse to our door if you're doing it from home, or the shipping from the warehouse to the 3PL. You forget all of that, and you can't, because every single penny counts when you're at scale.
absolutely. So, Salena, we're coming up on time. And before I let you go, I want to ask you if there's a book that has changed you in really something that you really liked.
So I think one of the best books that ever got me through was, coming from the classics. It's Seth Godin's The Dip, The Cliff. I think it's just called The Dip, but in it he has 3 scenarios. You're at the dip, the cliff, or the roundabout. I can't remember what the last one is, but he tells you that there will always be dips in a business journey. But it's understanding if you're in a dip or if you're at the cliff, the cliff ready to jump off, throw it all away. So it's a really easy read. I don't know, maybe like 100 pages. You can read it in a couple of hours. I think if you're ever at a low point in your business, it's a really great book to kind of really get you thinking about where you're at and what you want from your business. And he does a really good job of saying, if you're experiencing these things, you're just in a dip. And it's going to happen. If you're in business for any length of time, you're going to have a dip. But if you're at the cliff, that's different. This is the point where you have to decide to make it or break it. They're the two. I can't remember what the third one is. So I think it might have been the roundabout. But to me, though, those were always the 2 bits that I took away from the book, was just trying to work out, like, I opened my business in the middle of the GFC. So the whole world was in mass economic depression. I don't recommend it. But we went on to be very, very successful. But I think whenever I got to those low points, I always came back to those 2 parts of his book going, do I chuck it in, or do we just have to ride this out, and what do we have to do to make it better? And of course it was always a dip. Yeah. Until I got to the point where it was the cliff, and the cliff was the that we never really talked about that, but the cliff was the point where my staff actually used to say to me, why do you come to work every day? Because I'd go in my office, I'd be there early, I'd stay late. And one of my girls said to me one day, you're just bored. Like, what are you doing here? You don't do anything other than hassle the customers, because you come out and have a chat or play on Facebook. And I was like, no, I am really busy. And she's like, no, you aren't. Like, honestly, you don't need to be here. And I think it was about 4 weeks later, I ended up putting the business on the market, because it was at that point I realized I just didn't know what else to do with myself. Like, I got this business to the point where it was fully processed. If things changed, I'd get an email saying, hey, just to let you know that the point of sale got updated. It's okay. I've updated the process book. What am I doing here? So yeah, I think that the cliff became for me when I didn't feel like, I could have taken that even further, but I'd lost the thing. Once it occurred to me, I was selling baby stuff and my kid was, 7 or something. I was just out of that headspace. The challenge for me was the building of the business, and I kind of got it. I could have gone to the next level to scale, but I decided I was actually really good at helping other people make money. So I sold the business, and now that's what I do.
Great stuff. So Salena, for the people that want to find you and hear more about you, where do they go?
Okay, so I am just at salenaknight.com. Now I am Salena, not like Selena Gomez. People call me Sal, and the reason they call me Sal is because there's an A, and I'm going to pop that free guide for you over at salenaknight.com/product. So if you want this all written down, it's kind of about 8 or 9 pages, but it's all literally stepped out for you. Follow those steps, and I'm pretty confident that you will get yourself into some get some of your products into some stores.
Very good. I'll have that on the show notes. And for everybody listening, Salena also has a podcast, and pretty soon you should be reaching 1 million downloads.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited. I don't know when this is going to go live, but Neil Patel just agreed to come on my show. So I'm very, very excited. It's called Bringing Business to Retail. So it's business strategies for retailers. So if you're e-commerce, if you're online, Etsy, Amazon, all those kinds of things, we don't delve into any of those specifically, but we talk about things like this. How do you get your product into stores? We talk a lot about mindset. We talk a lot about what it takes to move to the next level. So it doesn't matter where you're at, whether you're turning over $2,000 a year or $20 million a year. I think we can always learn more from other people who've been there, done that, have had a different experience. And if you want to listen, you've got Quin's podcast, or you can come and listen to Bringing Business to Retail. It's on all the good places.
Very good, Salena. And I will be listening for sure, because I really love Neil Patel, and I'm jealous that you're going to have him.
I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, no kidding.
Thank you so much for having me. And guys, if you have any problems, or issues getting your products into stores, feel free to reach out. If you head over to the website, there's a great big contact thing. Send me an email and we can see if we can help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Salena.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, bye.